You've tuned in to another edition of The Break Room, a weekly conversation about how the City of St. Augustine works from those who do the work every day. Hosted by the City of St. Augustine's Communications Director, Melissa Whistle, The Break Room offers a closer look at the different city departments and provides updates on current and upcoming projects and events. And now your host, Melissa Whistle.
Welcome to The Break Room. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Melissa Whistle, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. Jessica Beach is back in studio. Jessica is our Chief Resilience Officer, and we're going to continue the conversation about flood mitigation solutions for our residents. Jessica, welcome back.
Thank you, Melissa, for having me back.
We had a really great conversation, and when we got up from our chairs, we said we really should continue this conversation, and so we're here continuing that conversation. Our residents are really important. I think they sometimes feel like we aren't listening, and we really are listening. You in particular have been to the residents' homes. You've walked through their houses with all of the flooding that has happened. Can you share with us how that process works? We've talked about the FEMA FMA program, the flood mitigation assistance. That's with our consultant. That's great. They're fantastic. But you have some firsthand experience that I'd love to have you share with our listeners, and then also for those who flooded and those just who don't know what the process is.
Exactly. And so it's something that we started really when we heard from the residents needing assistance, like how can we, the city, help our residents and kind of connect them to those resources that are available. So that flood mitigation assistance program is a federally funded program. So that's the large ticket items for physically elevating your home. But something that we realized, and this was really spearheaded with myself and also working with our building official, Buddy Shalin, who's our floodplain manager, he's very, very knowledgeable when it comes to flood mitigation on these buildings and what can be done. So I'm looking at it more from like a drainage and stormwater and engineering aspect, which is typically looking more at the city's infrastructure. But we really wanted to narrow it in on properties and what homeowners can do and give them some ideas, some guidance, some options. And I think a big part of the outreach that we've tried to do as well, coupling with our neighborhood association meetings, we started offering for residents that wanted to invite city staff to come to their properties. We could physically look at their yards, the landscaping, look at the homes. They would show us where they flooded. This is how high the water got. Some had photos. Some would bring their flood elevation certificates.
Okay.
So Buddy could walk them through and say, these are the numbers that are important. This number means you're at this elevation. And then for the homeowners really understanding, oh, my finished floor elevation of my home's at 5 feet. Well, Hurricane Matthew was at 7 feet. So these are houses that maybe had 2, 3, even 4 feet of flooding in them. So they're trying to educate on that risk and then ultimately risk reduction. What can you do as a property owner? And so there's a lot of things that can be done just with landscaping. And we talked a little bit about that in our last meeting about berms and even flood walls, getting sump pumps that residents can, and these are things that are lower hanging fruit that are a little bit more cost effective if they're not in a position to physically raise their structure or their home. And there's a number of websites and resources available. So one of the things that we started doing was putting together these site inspection forms, and it's got maps and it shows flood elevations and flood zones and things of that nature, and also lists of resources and websites that they can go to and start looking to see, oh, I could maybe invest in a sump pump. So when it does rain, I can move that water into the city street.
Gotcha.
Just things that they can do to help with that.
And you have physically, you've made the house calls.
Yes.
You've seen it.
Yes.
And talked with people. And it's very emotional. It's very, it's very personal.
And these residents have gone through so much, and talk about the stress and the trauma, especially if they've flooded more than once. And there's a lot involved. I know just for us personally, that hurricane preparation that we do, not only as a city, but for our properties, the sandbags, and you're trying to do what you can beforehand. Right. So we put in the resources as much as we can into the hands of our property owners to empower them, to help them. This is the resources available to kind of guide them on that, because there's a lot of products that are becoming available now that are on the market. They do range in costs and complexity. And so really you have to make that personal decision as a property owner, is like, what can I physically do? Sandbags are heavy. Is there something else that I could look at? And then there's others that want to do that long-term commitment of actually raising their homes.
And is that called wet proofing?
They have wet proofing and dry proofing, and Buddy really knows the ins and outs of that. And so that's where he comes in and can give them some direction and guidance. And we've learned from other property owners where we had met with one lady who had flooded, and the contractor was very creative for her and literally built a platform in her garage that was multi-stepped so she could raise her washer and her dryer. And it's very simple, but it got that appliance out of the flood zone. A lot of people
have washer dryer in their garages.
Exactly.
The older homes don't have it inside.
So they were able to just, things like that. So a lot of residents talk with one another and they're learning from each other as well. And even some that have participated in some of these federal funded programs to be able to go through that process. So we've tried to put the resources in the hands of the residents, usually after the site visit, after we've gone through, we've looked at everything that they want to show us. We talk about options, and then I'll usually send a follow-up email with that inspection report. So they have the website, the links, my contact information, just kind of everything that we talked about. And then we can kind of go from there if they have follow-up questions and things like that.
And some of the stuff that Buddy knows about, we'd have Buddy with us today, but he's on vacation, which is okay. But yeah, you guys are really a great tag team of getting out there and talking to the residents. Are you still doing neighborhood meetings? Can anybody call you and say, hey, come and talk to me? It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. We can do, there's a few neighborhoods that we haven't done the official, like a neighborhood meeting, but we're offering those individual site visits year round. And so we're happy to talk, whether it's at a larger scale association meeting or just a group of residents that would want to get together and talk through some of that. We've had residents that wanted to cost share on these flood walls because they can be expensive. And it's basically a decorative concrete wall around their property. So they got together and had several property owners talk about that option and permits involved and things like that. So we're willing to meet with whoever wants to listen on that. And it's not just residents, but our commercial properties. There's a lot of flexibility with things that they can do on commercial properties, and also for our historic properties. There's actually a really nice resource and checklist worksheet that came out of that Resilient Heritage study. It's a whole slew of different options that can be applicable, not only historic buildings, but residential.
Hold that thought. If you are now just tuning in, you are listening to The Break Room. I'm Melissa Whistle, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. And returning to the studio with me today is Jessica Beach, the city's Chief Resilience Officer. And I know people probably kind of get tired in some respects about talking about the flood mitigation and flooding, but it's something that we hear so much from the residents. I think I'm so glad that you came back just to continue the dialogue, because I do hope our listeners understand now, maybe the more you and I just sit here and have this conversation, we really do listen. We understand how personal this is with this flooding. We live in an old city. We have really old pipes, old water systems, and we're doing what we can.
Yes, there's a lot of limitations. And so I think really when you look at the resilient strategy, there's different things that you can do on the policy side, planning, projects that we focus a lot on, but also just that education and outreach component and getting the resources into the hands of our residents to empower them and encourage them, because we can't the city is not going to be able to go in and build these walls on their property, individual properties typically, or providing that type of, we're trying to get the information in their hands so then they can make those personal decisions on if they want to elevate, or if they want to landscape, or if they want to buy door dams or the different panels that you can put up and things like that. So
it's I've been pleased as I've watched this unfold. I remember, and you were there with Ruben. You guys were doing a presentation about, I think it was more about Coquina Park from that standpoint, but there was a resident and she was really upset with the city and just, what are you going to do? And you feel horrible because you want to be able to respond. We'd love to, but we can't. But I like what you're saying, which is so true, is empowering our residents. We know that it's important for you to be able to save your home, do something to stay where you want to stay, because you want to be in that neighborhood, wherever it is. So hopefully our listeners are hearing that we are listening.
Yes.
And they're listening that we're listening. So, but the conversation with you is always great. What else are we, I know that, let's talk just a little bit, because we can, we do have those city projects going on, that downtown area down south of City Hall with Lake Maria Sanchez. Can you give us a quick recap on that one as well?
Sure. And so that's where that's probably our largest flood mitigation project, and it is going to protect kind of the core of our historic district. What we're realizing as we're going through that, these projects are very large, they're very complex, and they take a lot of time and money. So what I think that in the interim, while we're trying to work on these larger capital projects and trying to seek funding and get all of that stuff worked out to ultimately build those large projects, which will help with flood and nuisance flooding and flood protection, we really found there's a gap of the need for these homes. And so what we're learning too through these grant programs, they're putting the funding on critical assets, not necessarily a residential neighborhood.
Right.
And so there's a need for residents to do something. And, the city can build flood walls and pump stations and do drainage improvements, which take time and money, but residents can raise their houses and get out of that risk. And that ultimately is one of those, you need all of those components working together to reduce reduce the risk rather, and provide that resilience in the long run.
And that elevation is really what that FMA focus, the flood mitigation assistance program that we've talked about in the past, what our consultants come in to help us and help our residents. It's that elevation solution, if you will. And does our community benefit? Do you know about? I know Buddy talks about it.
A little bit about that.
And it helps our rating.
It's all tied together.
Right.
And I think from when we look at holistically as a city, you want to exhaust all of your options. And so that what they call like non-structural solutions or even nature-based solutions is physically elevating those buildings. And it does help. And it's ultimately the pocket of the property owner, because keeping in mind, it's the flood insurance costs. If you flooded and you're still having that insurance, those rates are going to continue to go up. And there's a lot of big changes coming to the National Flood Insurance Program. So it's really in the best interest of property owners to reduce their risk, because that does reduce their costs.
So it's really the insurance industry says, okay, if you're going to keep flooding and you're not going to do something to fix your house, we're going to just keep hitting you up with
exactly
with higher insurance.
Expensive. Yes, and Buddy knows more about some of the changes coming. I know he's sat on some workshops and things like that, and he may be able to talk more specific about it. But it does help costs for the homeowner, not only from the damages that you have to, you're trying to pay for, and because FEMA doesn't pay 100% of that, it's
right.
a lot. There's a lot of out-of-pocket costs, and so you're reducing that cost and impact.
The community gets a rating from the insurance industry as well. So I think overall, the community as a whole benefits.
Yes.
When we as residents and as the city mitigate the flooding as well.
It does. It shows that we're being proactive, and a big part of that is the outreach and education. And so we do get credit just by participating in the programs, and as more people get involved and are doing things and reducing that risk, it helps out the entire community, and that does tie into our rating system and the discount.
And the homeowner will find that their insurance will go down when they mitigate.
It should.
We're not insurance professionals, but let's put that caveat in there. But yeah, the whole idea here is to make the community more resilient, and for hopefully our homeowners saying, okay, I can do something about this.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily have to leave, and I can find some funding.
Or wait on the city to build these large projects, which take years.
Years, right. We've been talking about Lake Maria Sanchez for I don't know how long.
It's been 4 years in design, and we're not there yet. There's a lot of design left. That's maybe another conversation.
That'll be another
day.
conversation, but I know it's coming along.
Yes.
And again, just there is money and funding out there, and we're doing the best that we can to get that into the hands of our homeowners.
Exactly.
To help them offset those costs.
Exactly.
So tune in to citysaynog.com. Check out our website. You're going to find information there about our flood mitigation or our flood mitigation assistance program. And Jessica, as always, it's great to have you on talking about this very important topic.
Thank you, Melissa.
As we wrap up another edition of The Break Room, if you missed part of this broadcast and want to go back and listen from the beginning, check it out at citysynogradio.com. We want to keep you informed about what's happening in and around the city, and most importantly, that you hear it here from the people doing the work and making it happen every day. In order to stay connected, you need to be connected. Be sure to like us and follow us on social media. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at City Say Nog. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
You've been listening to The Break Room, a weekly program addressing projects and programs offered by the City of St. Augustine. Join us each week as the city's communications director, Melissa Whistle, has in-depth conversations with the people who make our town work to meet the needs of our community. The Break Room is produced by communications specialist for the City of St. Augustine, Cindy Walker, and engineer by Flagler College communication major, Anne Marie Gresham. See you at this time next week for another edition of The Break Room.